Welcome back to another episode of Perma POWERTALK. I'm your host, Fred Rittenauer, a local RSM here in the Charlotte area. And today I have the honor and privilege of talking with Melissa, who is a part of our marketing department here at Perma USA. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm excited for this conversation to have today because we're going to take kind of a step back at the industry and what Perma is as a whole, how we service, I'm going to say the world, because of the different industries and areas that we play in. But I know that you and I are close to the same amount of tenure here, with you just recently getting hired and I'm about 6 months after that. So I wanted to see what your initial thoughts were or what your knowledge was around Perma and kind of what it is today now that you're 6 to 8 months in the role in marketing here.
So it's been really cool because I knew absolutely nothing about any of this going in. Like, getting ready for my job interview, I'm going like, okay, company, Perma USA. They make single point lubricators. Lubrication industry, just like working my way down that Google rabbit hole.
Yep.
Because you don't think about how big an impact it has on your everyday life because you never see it. But like even just going through your normal morning, I roll over, I pick up my phone. There's little electronics in that phone that came from a mine. Mine needs lubrication. There's data centers keeping the internet running. Data centers need cooling. Cooling needs lubrication. Mm-hmm. There's, all this manufactured stuff. Manufacturing, you need lubrication. It goes on and on. It's just every piece of your morning, even like the elevator up to your floor at work needs lubrication. So it's cool to see something that is both so essential and so universal, despite the fact that almost nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah. It's like when I first joined, I was driving down the road and there was things that I would never pick up prior to getting in this industry and working for Perma. And so like you see behind us right there, a rock quarry, they are everywhere. But to the common everyday person, they don't even exist. Prior to Perma, I would drive past them literally on some of my routes and never even know that they were there. I just thought it was woods with a random entrance into it. And so it's cool to see that because as you mentioned, like every single thing that we touch, Perma could probably be utilized in the beginning stages, if not even the finished product goods, because like Amazon, like they have created such a demand for humans to be like, I want it and I want it right now. And so 2-day shipping, it's fast. You pick up your phone, you can look at that. All of those things are integrated into this world because from the boxes that the Amazon products are packaged in, that's a pulp and paper facility. Mm-hmm. So they're manufacturing those boxes that have tons of Perma units all over their facilities. And so it's cool to see it. So hopefully we can take a step back today and break down really the essence of what Perma is, how we service the world, and where our products fit in different applications and industries that we have out there. So from a unsung hero standpoint in this industry, what's a very basic definition of lubrication for you? And I guess how do you view it or think of it in day-to-day life?
So the way I think about it, right, is anytime you have two objects that move like past each other, you get friction. Anytime you have friction, you're going to get some amount of damage. In some cases, maybe you're getting a lot of damage. And so the point of lubrication is to reduce that friction. One of the ways I like to think about it is I don't know if you're ever like a kid being like dragged around by your siblings, but if you get like that dragged across the carpet, you get that rug burn. It's essentially trying to prevent machines from getting that same like friction-based damage.
Yeah, 100%. I've gotten a lot of those, and especially like playing football and sports growing up, turf burn. Mm-hmm. That's what I think of as well, just because those are very gnarly when you get them. And so, it eliminates that friction to keep those plants operating, because taking that a step further, if that friction happens and that point seizes up, that operation has to stop there at that facility. And so they won't be able to continue their process, which is great. And that's where Perma plays a vital role, is just continuously and consistently greasing these points on these applications to make sure from a efficiency, reliability, safety standpoint that these facilities are up and moving 24/7 like they need to be in operation. And so just like I stopped when I got that turf burn and put a Band-Aid with some Neosporin on it, we're essentially helping so that way they don't have to bandage their products and can continue running throughout the day that they have ahead of them. From people's standpoints, and again, prior to Perma, how do individuals or how can individuals interact with lubrication, or have they, whether it's at their household or out there and things that they do commonly with their family?
Yeah, I mean, my like training onboarding process for Perma, one of the questions I was asked was, what do you know about lubrication? And really, I was like, well, I can fix a squeaky door hinge with a can of WD-40, but that's about it. And that, I think, is really, as far as directly interacting with lubrication, I think that's about it for most people. Greasing door hinges, fixing that sticky junk drawer in your kitchen, things like that. And it's not an entirely different process. We're just doing that with obviously different grease, different equipment on a much larger scale.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool to think about it as well, because we're talking about big industrial companies and showing pictures like this or facilities that we're in that really don't resonate with people. Mm-hmm. But another way to look at it, and that's very relatable for people, is going into the airports. Mm-hmm. And all of those carousels that the bags come out on, each one of those has little bearings in it that our units can sit on. You can think of big amusement parks in Florida or North Carolina or even in Cleveland, Sandusky, Ohio. All of those things have moving parts. And so when we start thinking about how much stuff has moving parts, it's crazy to think about, because there's applications everywhere that can utilize the solution that we offer, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So looking at it kind of a little bit deeper and just trying to visualize the impact that Perma single point lubricators have, what does lubrication look like day to day, and how does Perma do it differently?
Okay, so we've got a big industrial facility of some kind. Their lubrication process is probably manual lubrication. You've got people going around with grease guns. If you've never seen a grease gun, it looks like a caulk gun, but obviously filled with grease. And so they're going around to each individual point. So we've got multiple points per individual machine, mm-hmm. sometimes, ridiculous numbers, and they have to go around and grease each individual one. And generally, you're kind of guessing how much grease it needs. You probably have a general idea, but some people will put in a lot, some people don't put in quite enough. But you have to go around all day doing that, and that's a process that needs to be repeated frequently. And so what Perma's doing differently to try and address some of the issues with that is having a little device that you screw onto each of your lubrication points that has a certain period of time it will run mm-hmm. for, and it's delivering a consistent amount of grease through that whole time period. And that's saving people time. It's saving you having way too much grease, and then the grease runs out, and then you add more grease, you got way too much grease again, mm-hmm. and then the grease runs out. It's just that nice, consistent level of grease.
Yeah, when I first joined into Perma, I kept looking up competitors, like who is mm-hmm. a competitor, and there were some companies that would pop up, but I didn't realize that the grease gun is still single-handedly our biggest competitor out there, which is wild, because in that fast-paced world that we were talking about with Amazon and everything, all of these facilities and these different organizations are trying to figure out how can we produce more, so that way we can get things out of the door to continue to push the growth of not only the company, but also what the facilities are capable of. And so from a greasing standpoint, they have to walk those facilities every day. And we're not looking to take anybody's job away. That is not the mission behind the single point lubricators. But safety is always a concern, mm-hmm. reliability, the efficiency. And so that allows us to help them be safer, be more efficient, have more reliable solution than just a grease gun, because those individuals are getting pulled from that job to work on something else. And like mm-hmm. you said, then it's getting forgot, so it's under greased. Then they go back out there, pump it back up to get it high. And so it really is just holistically the approach that our units are able to offer, and the capabilities goes a long way in these facilities that are constantly getting demanded for more because of how fast-paced the world is moving. And you got to think about it. Technology, there's so much more stuff that goes into that than just writing on a notepad. Mm-hmm. So before, we only had to create the notepad. Now we got to create the data center. We got to create the thing that cools the data center. We got to create the power that gets to the data center. And so there's just so many different facets that are taking, or that have applications that could take our single point lubricator on it, which is really cool to see out there. Are you familiar with the story of how Perma got started?
Yes, I love the story of how Perma got started. So you've got this young German entrepreneur who's, got this little factory, and they're making these little small appliances, and he's got this machine that he's always trying to lubricate, and it's not quite working, and it's taking up so much of his time, and he's kind of done, going over there with the oil can at regular intervals. So he's trying to figure out a solution, what can be doing that for him. And so the solution he comes up with is, you've got almost like a little tin can, right? And you got the grease at the bottom mm-hmm. of the tin can, and above that you have a little plastic sort of bladder, and you've got a chemical in there. And you add another chemical to it that does a slower, more consistent version of what I think is probably the most popular science fair project, which is the baking soda volcano.
Yeah.
So you add your second thing, and it starts to bubble, and you do that. And instead of, just exploding everywhere and being a huge mess, it does this slow expanding. And when the top part expands, it pushes the grease out the bottom. So now he's got this thing he can put on that machine, and he can just walk away. And he can be doing the better things he has to do with his time.
Yep.
And the lubrication is taken care of until that can is empty. And we still make essentially the same thing. Obviously, it's been updated a little bit. We make the Perma Classic, which is still that metal container with the grease and the chemical reaction on top.
Yeah, I love that story. It's fun to talk about it, especially when you're out there in a facility like this, or like, you what? And it's not often that I get to tell the whole history of Perma, because these guys, guys and girls out there working these facilities are moving at such fast pace. They don't have time to sit down and talk a lot. It's how can you help me? Okay, let's see this, let's test it, let's get it going, because we see the value, which is so cool. But like you mentioned, everything from our classic unit to our Star Varia and Ultra units that are some of our newer technologies, every single one of our product line, I think there's 7 or 9 different product lines that we have in the single point lubricator space. They each play a critical role in those facilities. So we don't have to be married to one application. We don't have to be married to one specific thing that we can service or help improve, because we can go on motors, blowers, fans, conveyors. And because of that flexibility that we have in our product portfolio, we're able to help the entire plant or the entire facility than just being able to help a portion of it, which I think is a great value add that Perma is able to present to our end users or customers that we service. So being that we covered a lot of the industries and different applications or world that Perma plays in, I think it'll be interesting to hear from a marketing side of things, what was the one thing or a couple of things that just made you go, wow, that's wild that we're able to do this or have done this?
The thing that always gets me is anytime I'm looking at case studies and things we do, that cost savings is almost always 80% or a little bit above, which when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of 5 years or so, is amazing that we can be so effective to save that big a chunk of the cost savings when we do still have some labor and some grease costs. Things, we're not perfect, things will occasionally break, there's still costs there, but it comes down just a tremendous amount. Perma.
Yeah, being able to give something the attention it needs constantly is, it changes the game for them. And so it's cool to not only see the benefits of what single point lubricators do and how we play into the different industries that we talked about, but next time that you guys are out there turning on your light switch in the morning, plugging your phone in at night, or even scooping your dog's dog food, there is probably a place along that journey that Perma has played into. Even the clothes that we wear, to the toothpaste that we brush our teeth on, all of these things go through a manufacturing process, and it just depends on where in that process Perma has played a role in it. But there's a ton of case studies out there. There's a ton of videos out there on applications that we service, things that we've done. So feel free to check those out. Check out our previous episodes that we've had, and we look forward to talking to you next time on the Perma Power Talk.